Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just have a short presentation for members of council and the public to put tonight's discussion on the strategic plan into a context. It's a preliminary draft. The last update of the strategic plan for the town was in 2015, and it's common practice that strategic plans last a long time. They're not sure what changes may come to the plan under this review, but strategic plans typically are very long-term in mind. Tonight's agenda, the purpose of the evening, we want to review management's comments. We'll get into a little bit later, but we did meet as a management group. That would be the managers, the directors, and myself. Had a couple of off-site meetings where we reviewed the plan as it stands today and looked at what changes we might recommend. Main purpose of this evening's meeting is get input from you as council before we determine what kind of community consultation we'd like to receive. If we can take a step back just for a second and remind ourselves the importance of strategic planning. Each municipality's strategic plan may be different, but what they all have in common is that they align the various stakeholders for a common purpose. And it's that alignment that we want to get through this process. We're aligning the community with council's vision and with the administration. Residents are not, if we align all those views together, residents aren't surprised when they see budget items appear before council as part of the budget process. We're building buy-in to a future plan when it unfolds in the future, and that just makes all the parts work smoothly together, and I think it focuses council, it focuses the community and administration on achieving council's end vision. Some of the observations that we had was the managers, as I mentioned, the managers, directors, and myself. I'll quickly go through them because I thought it was interesting observations. We hadn't met as a group to discuss this topic before. We recognized that there was a fair amount of consultation when the 2015 plan was developed. Looking back through the files, there was surveys, there were focus groups, there were consultation sessions. A lot of input into the plan that council has before it that's currently in place was developed in 2015. As management, we didn't feel it appropriate to comment on the vision and mission and the guiding principles as we went through the work. We thought that's more appropriate for council to provide comment, whether those vision statements and the mission are still appropriate, whether they resonate with you as a new council. We thought as a management group that there were too many goals and priorities. What we did was take all the management staff each year develop KPOs, key performance objectives, and we mapped those objectives that everybody has against the plan. Now, some people might have objectives that aren't strategic operational objectives, but we mapped them, and there were an awful lot of gaps in the strategic plan. So that told us, for the size of our organization and the staff that we have, we just can't do everything and achieve everything. So we thought, is the plan, should we condense it? Should we reduce it? And that was one of the recommendations that we're bringing forward today. We also noticed that the environment and the communications were areas that weren't addressed at all in the strategic plan, so we're bringing forward recommendations. A couple of the staff mentioned that when they were doing their KPOs, they weren't sort of relating the town's strategic plan to them developing their own goal plan. And some do, some don't, but we saw all opportunities there to do a better job. So just a recap on the changes. So reduce the goals, strategic goals, from 5 down to 3. That's in the package that you had over the weekend. We've added 2 strategic priorities, the environment and community engagement. The environment with global warming, climate change, plastics, all of those things that we've seen lots of resolutions over the last number of months with respect to the environment. We thought it deserved a specific heading. So We've termed it environmental consciousness. Community engagement. Engagement, we picked that word because it's two-way. It's not just us pushing out our message to the public. We want to engage the public and hear back from them. So it implies two-way communication. We refined the wording under growth and development with no major change. It's more, I'd say, wordsmithing. And under the organizational excellence, we wanted to emphasize the importance of teamwork, collaboration, and working across departments. Many of the challenges faced by municipalities in this day and age aren't isolated. It's not just a public works issue or just a finance issue or just a fire department or a planning issue. They're very much complex, cross-functional, and interdisciplinary. So it's important when we take on those challenges that we bring all the skills to the table. I think that excites staff, gives them an opportunity to do something that's maybe a little bit outside of what the mainstream that they do on a regular basis. And when we discussed this at the manager group, they had thought it was important and had no problem with these types of changes. The next topic, this is going to come later on, but we thought we'd mention it at this point, linking the plans to action. I mean, that's typically what doesn't happen in either business organizations or municipalities. You come up with a plan, you go through the consultation, and it sits over here, and the work you do is over here. And so we want to bring those two together and really action the strategic plan. That's why linking staff's key performance objectives to the strategic plan is important. I've asked Alicia, our HR coordinator, to be here this evening because as our new HR coordinator, working on performance reviews, the format, tying that back to key performance objectives and as part of staff's evaluation, that all ties together, and that's really important. And all with the desire of implementing council's strategic plan, council's vision. A topic not necessarily for discussion today, but in recently there's been some emails around about a couple of committees that council hasn't reinstated at this point in time. That was a conscious decision at the new term of council because some of those committees we weren't sure, is the role going to change? And before we go and appoint people, let's make sure what committees are going to work, where's the best opportunity to get the value from the public and their expertise. So we thought through this process, as we review the strategic plan, I think just keep in mind, are there opportunities where an advisory committee might work? And towards the end of the process, once the strategic plan is finalized, then we can set up those committees and have a better idea what we want them to do. One of the things that we talked about briefly would, as an example, waste diversion committee. You know, and it's not just for the town, but it's for the community. Some people talk about waste or wet garbage. Do we, as a community, recycle? Can we improve our recycling? From a town perspective, we don't have a lot of recycling bins throughout the community. Should we do that? So there's a lot of areas that the community, an advisory committee, could get involved with, educating the public about what's recyclable, because I understand from people there's a lot of things end up in recycling bins that at the end of the day aren't recycling. So there's an education component, there's a component to further encourage recycling and look at other types of waste diversion. And that could be the bottles, use of plastic bottles, a whole range of things. So that's just one idea of maybe a committee would work in that sense. So where we're looking for council's comments and input this evening is just any general comments and observations that you've seen in terms of the management recommendations we put forward, what you've noticed from the plan. 5 members of council are returning from last term, so is there any observations about that plan that you wanted to make this evening? As I mentioned earlier, we didn't comment as staff on the vision and mission and the guiding principles, but that's more, I think, a council prerogative in there. But does the vision, the mission, and the guiding principles, do they make sense to you? Oftentimes they're shorter, more concise. I've seen in some organizations, rather than guiding principles, they have values, short value statements. So any comments that members of council may have with respect to the vision, the mission, and the guiding principles, we'd appreciate. Are there strategic priorities that you don't believe are properly covered or highlighted enough in the strategic plan? As management, we identified two: communications and the environment, but there may be others. And what's the extent of community consultation that you'd like to see? There was extensive consultation last term, and I'm not sure what what the desire is of council in this term. Surveys, public meetings, evening meetings, a daytime meeting. What would be the desire of the council? And this is the beginning of a process. It's certainly not the end of a process this evening. So your input and feedback can help guide us over the next period of time to get that input. Once we incorporate all the feedback from this evening, we'll have an idea of the community consultation you'd like to see. We can schedule that, and then that'll all be pulled back together and report back to council finally for adoption. We've suggested, I think, in the staff report that perhaps a public meeting in consultation session in October, but that's dependent on the extent and type of consultation that council wants. If it's a more extensive consultation, then that date would probably move out. That's the end of our comments, presentation, and just open it up for members of council.
Oh yeah, right. It's too early for me. I keep forgetting about the microphone. So I guess we'll begin with comments from anyone. Vanessa? Sorry, Councillor Backlund.
Thank you, Clayton, for summarizing everything. This is an exciting moment for me, as I was very interested in working on the strategic plan as moving forward in my council role. I would have to agree with you, just focusing on some of the things that I noticed and taking some extensive review in other municipal strategic plans. One of the things that I've seen that maybe sometimes there's a little bit of duplication in the previous vision and guiding principles, and a lot of municipalities work towards the value system, being values are focused on how we conduct ourselves and what we represent. So when I look at the kind of long-winded guiding principle term, which I don't think a lot of people are going to really remember, in summary, it speaks to lifestyle, environmental responsibility, sustainability, and opportunity. And those are the key four values that I see from the previous one. Now, I don't know, I think that through further consultation from council and the public and staff, maybe those values could be reviewed if they still represent our organization, which I think sustainability and environment are kind of are key values that we see in the proposed draft strategic plan. Opportunity, of course, is always there, but again, based on the feedback, it would be interesting to see if we elaborate as focus on workplace excellence. Maybe that becomes a key value that we take on. But again, I think maybe I would like to see us move away from the guiding principles terminology to more focused on, 3 or 4 key values that represent us. With regards to community engagement, I noticed that I think it was suggested that there was going to be maybe one evening session. I think it's important to offer a day session. We have a lot of shift work in our community, and I think that would allow for opportunity for more people's input, more community engagement. I'm very adamant on engaging our youth as part of the process. And with regards to Municipal Week coming up in October, it might be advantageous for us to engage in some kind of feedback from the youth during that time. I think it would be great to include the high school. I don't think that we focus Municipal Week on them, but maybe it's a matter of a survey. And I don't know if it's been done in the past. I can't recall from your report at the moment, but if we're assigning a 5 set of questions, such as, just let me pull it up. I see it as, what makes the town of Parry Sound a unique place to live and work? What do you think the town of Parry Sound's greatest strengths are? What is your vision for the town of Parry Sound? What are the top 3 priorities for the town of Parry Sound to achieve this vision? And what are the greatest challenges to achieving these priorities? And what is the municipality's role in advancing the vision? Are just some key questions that I thought that we could maybe send out to our high school students. And maybe that's something we put as a form or some kind of survey on our website, so that those people who are not able to participate in our community engagement sessions, that it is available to them. I think that just speaks to the day and age that we are in. And then one of the things that I did notice is in regards to, we recently approved a recreation plan, and we're moving forward with a recreation, a RFP for a pool wellness, which obviously is going to take some priority and time allocated to it, and I just didn't know where that might fit into the draft, the draft strategic plan. That's it.
Do you have anything you want to respond with at all?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have any sort of fundamental issues, and I agree with a lot of your comments. Talking about the guiding principles, some organizations, when they come up with values, it's ideally a shorter list, because you want people to remember them. If you talk to an employee and you ask them what the guiding principles are for the municipality, I don't think anybody could recite what's in the strategic plan. But if you got some short, punchy values, I retired from the city of Vaughan in 2013, and I still remember its values. It's respect, accountability, and dedication, because it spells RAD. It's that kind of a thing. People, acronyms, and then you remember. Whatever is values, what's important to the town. If you can get that out in short, quick words or a short sentence, and put an acronym behind it, people remember it. And if the point of actually living those values, people need to remember it. So, certainly I wouldn't disagree with that. And whatever Community Engagement Council wants is certainly fine with staff. Daytime, evening surveys, whatever works is no concerns from staff. The website, the rec master plan. That's a tool. If you wanted more of a focus on parks and recreation, for example, that's a priority that could be added under our community, for example.
Council members that were here last strategic plan session can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we originally had a tough time getting people to come out to the public meetings. There wasn't a huge outgoing cry, so we went for focus groups on certain things and invited people in to capture the comments and the ideas and that sort of thing, and it actually worked a whole lot better. But you still have to have, I believe we had an evening session and a daytime session, because not everybody can make the daytime and not everybody can do the nighttime session. So we tried to capture the most possible scenarios that we could, and then seeing what you know, the sort of numbers said, okay, I think we need to actually go and start pulling people in so that we can get those ideas, people that are in the community doing something, and have a business or are involved in a number of different things, so that we actually could get more ideas and more input into it. And I believe that was quite well received from at the time. So I think all those things should be certainly tried again. And if we can do something online as well, I mean, it's easy enough to do. It can be done on the website. So, Councillor McCann.
Thank you. Yeah, I think as Councillor Beckman had mentioned, involving the youth, and I think that if we do what we can online, I'm just trying to recall what kind of response we had when we asked for feedback through the surveys we had online when we were putting our budget together. But I think certainly to engage the younger crowd, if we can work and do whatever we can, interaction, research, what have you, online, I think it would really help to encourage the younger people to put forth their own comments and feel like they're being included and thought of in our long-term process.
Councillor Warner.
Mr. Harris had a good point in mentioning that, a big part of this is getting people's attention in order to have them participate. My recollection is that this current strategic plan that we're continuing with sort of morphed out of the previous one, and my recollection further is that one morphed out of the one prior to that, out of the previous term.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying you should throw the baby out with the bathwater, but if you're to grab people's attention, maybe you need to allow them a little more latitude. If we're going to do this, if we're going to commit to do this, committing staff time and effort to doing this, maybe it has to be, in order to get that public attention, maybe it does have to be a rebuild, a restart. And I think this is a good time for a couple of reasons. It seems the community's, on the edge of, there are lots of things happening here and others talked about. I think the timing of this is good. If this plan, I think the idea of having a plan end with the term of council is kind of foolish, because it takes a while for the new group, whoever that might be, to become accustomed and be fully engaged. So having a little bit of overlap like this one would provide, to me, makes a lot of sense. So I think we should go for the whole shooting match. Use what's presented tonight maybe as a template, but allow the public engagement to drive us wherever it might take us. And Councillor Bachman did mention youth. I think that's important. I think there are a whole bunch of partners in the community, service clubs, other organizations, certainly the private sector that should be invited, asked in, given their opportunity to voice their opinions, and move forward from there.
Councillor Bachman.
Just to add on to that, Councillor Bordeman, I agree with the fact that the plan should be a longer-term plan. A lot of strategic plans that you see, or that I've researched, they're beginning at 5 years, but some go long-term, 10 years. You look overseas, and for instance in China, they're developing 20, 30, 50-year plans, and I understand that we don't do a lot of that here, but when we allocate a lot of these resources, and a lot of these plans are done through a lot of third-party consultation, where, depending on what efforts we put forth and the extent, it might be something to consider in the future to allocate into a budget to do a proper consultation with third party, if we don't get that achieved this year.
Anyone else? Councillor Keith? Oh, your microphone? Yeah. Okay, you're good.
I would say to start with, if we want to look at a longer-term plan, then I would say you look at a 10-year plan, because that puts you over 2 years for 2 terms. So that gives you a better idea, because you can always end up adjusting that or deciding to analyze a plan before the end of whatever the term of the strategic plan. Just to, I guess, basically add to what I hear tonight is to say, I think the draft that we have presented here would be good to put that on the website, again, just to spark interest. So this is what we're looking at right now, and that might spark some interest, so that when we go to, I think the focus groups are really important, that when we go to those, we've got that opportunity of something that's very basic to start with. As for the values, I like that, because I think the values not only should be in a strategic plan, but I think the values should be posted on the wall when people come into the municipal office to clearly see how they are. So I would agree with Councillor Boardman. It's time to kind of shake things up and come out with a total different sort of look. And frankly, I think all strategic plans, if you can get it down without so much writing, I think is easier for people to understand. It just becomes so descriptive. I think it's good for putting you to sleep at night, frankly. So that's my comments.
Councillor Bachman?
Just in reference to starting over, I just think that it's important for us to see also what we have on the table and what projects are currently on the go, and where staff can allocate that, you know, as long as we have enough of the resources. I don't know.
Well,
And-
I'm not sure whether starting over is going 180 degrees either. Like, I think you can throw a number of things up in the air, but you're going to grab a number of them that are the same on the way down. So you know, when I talk to people in the community, I certainly hear what people are after. It's not that far from what's actually here. So, but it would be good to hear what feedback that the community want. If it means a redraft on this somehow with new vision or new mission statement, values, whatever. I mean, we can all take a look at that. We won't know until we start getting some public feedback, and you know, so that's where we're going to have to go, is to the public. You know, I mean, we'll have our input as well, but you know, I want to know what the community's thinking. You know, but I do know that this is a town that needs growth, needs opportunity, and that's what we need to be looking for within, you know, hopefully future input into this. Because there are pressures coming from the provincial government, and we're asked to do more with less. And if we don't have growth, then there's only one thing you can do. And I don't think the ratepayers would like it. So, anyway, any further comments on structure or where we're going to go with this? I take it, Councillor Keith.
As I recall, the last time we had a moderator that really kept everything going for the focus groups.
Yep.
So I would hope that we don't decide to, I don't know, save money in that department, but have a moderator that really made everything work, because it was efficient in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the moderator we used last time was pretty good, and maybe that person might be interested in doing it again. Someone that's sitting outside of the corporation that, you know, is interested in pulling whatever they can out of the people in the room. Hmm? Yeah. Yep. So we do have a direction with the draft 2019-2022 strategic plan incorporating management's recommendations and considering council's commentary be brought forward to an evening public consultation session to be held in October 2019. And I think we've already determined that we're going to have more than just an evening session. So we could add to this an evening and afternoon or daytime. That way we're covered. Evening.
And that would be focus groups?
Haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
And further, that focus groups, focus sessions, be set up with various community groups. Community groups, business people, businesses, private sector. And youth, private sector, community partners. Okay, so what I've got here, it's just direction, so we can modify it. So I have that, I've added to what we had, and so I'll read it from the beginning, that the draft 2019-22 strategic plan, incorporating management's recommendations and considering council's commentary, be brought forward to an evening and daytime public consultation session to be scheduled in October 2019. And further, that focus sessions be set up with various community groups, private sector, community partners, and youth engagement. Councillor Keith.
As well as website survey.
Right. And further, that a website survey be established. How's that? Okay. Yes. How many? I can do a few more and further, so I'm going to run out of paper here.
Now, just wondering about the October date. If we're going to do focus groups and set them up, if maybe just take out maybe a future public consultation, put in future rather than October. It may be, sometime
It might
after
be
that.
November.
Yeah.
When we get to those.
Yeah.
But if we can do October with the daytime and the nighttime ones, that's what it says for October 2019.
Oh, that's for the focus groups? Or is that
That's for the evening and daytime public consultation sessions to be held. Now, then we're going to have focus groups as well, which are different because those will be invited, specifically invited people and organizations or representations from those to come in and share ideas.
Would you like the focus groups to take place before the larger public session?
No, we did it that way last time. I mean, this could be, the first two could be done in October, and then the other could be done in November. Councillor Borneman.
I was just gonna suggest that, you know, we've kind of given direction loosely here, that we allow Mr. Harris and the staff to kind of
decide
work
that?
out the nuts and bolts and come back and tell us, you know, at our next meeting or whatever, that, okay, folks, here's our plan, here's our schedule that we can reasonably deliver these things on. And, you know, because we are starting to get into budget setting season and all of the rest of it, so that would make sense to me.
So a final and that staff establish a schedule. Okay. And that staff establish a meeting schedule. That's the last part of it. Councillor McCann.
Just wondering if it wouldn't be natural to conclude that out of the public consultation meetings that the focus the focus groups could be identified, the needs could be identified, and the focus groups formed at that point.
Huh? Sorry, excuse?
Well, we're just, Mr. Harris was wondering, would we concern ourselves with the focus groups before, during, or after the public consultation meetings? And I would think that the public consultation meetings would give us an opportunity to identify what the focuses might be, and then sort of derive the focus groups from that point.
That can happen, yeah, and yeah. Anything further? I need a mover and seconder for this. Councillor Keith and Councillor Backman. All in favor then? And that's carried. I think that's it, right? Okay, mover and seconder to adjourn. Councillor McCann, Councillor Borneman, all in favor? And that's carried. Okay, thank you. How are you doing, Andrew?